The following Let's Play has been rated perfectly fine to watch. Any attempts to break the game are for entertainment value only. However, if any typos happen to be found... Hello everyone! Welcome back to this game. When we last left off, we beat the last world of the game, Space World. During which I had an actual cliffhanger complete with to be continued bumper, and I'm not entirely sure that the cause of the cliffhanger came across too well. One person seemed a little confused. I'm not entirely sure if it's confusion because why is there a cliffhanger, or a confusion because wait, what just happened? Not entirely sure, but you know, you need to get out of my way. Why can't I use Birdwatch on you? As I was saying, I'm kind of, sad that I can't have actual cliffhangers like that anymore, because nowadays all of my episodes, the sessions run so long that my sessions have to be split into multiple chapters, and so there's like cliffhangers all the time, and I don't get the opportunity to have real cliffhangers, so I miss the good old days whenever I sucked but had interesting cliffhangers every once in a while. Whatever, we're not here to reminisce. In fact, we're playing a Let's Play for the purpose of seeing how far I've come along, and I've definitely come a long ways away. Or so I assume. Pretty sure I've come a long ways away. During this Let's Play, I've been talking about a lot of stuff, by the way. Stuff that was in the game, planning to be in the game, but didn't actually get in the game. And, I'm going to be talking about more of that stuff today. I'm going to be talking about a whole lot of content that did not make it into the game. And while I'm talking about all that dropped content, I'm also going to be, showing off the remainder of the trophies and tokens. We are going to more or less 100% the game today. Well, today along with the next episode, more or less. First thing I'm going to do though is come in here because somebody pointed out an interesting possible glitch. Let's see, this is Space World, so if I go into this menu here, it should say that we're in Space World. Instead it says we're in Hot Rock. Not entirely sure what's up with that. That's pretty much the only reason why I wanted to come in here. By the way, the reason why we're going back for trophies and tokens that we missed, or rather the reason we have trophies and tokens that we missed, is because some locations and trophies and stuff in the game actually require you to acquire abilities in later portions of the game and eventually come back. Gotta say, I think I do a better job of it than they did in Banjo-Tooie. In Banjo-Tooie, it gets kind of confusing at times because it's not always obvious when you don't have the proper ability in order to get a new Jiggy. For example, in the dinosaur level, you're eventually told to, hey, hatch my eggs, and I spent like quite a while trying to figure out how to hatch them. I tried stomping on them, I tried smashing them, I tried blowing them up. No, it turns out I had to come back later after I taught Kazooie how to sit on eggs. Yeah, that's apparently a thing she had to learn. The only annoyance in my game, in this case, is having to swap to previous memory cards, swap back and forth between memory cards, which is pretty much why I'm saving 100% in the game until now. Oh, don't get me wrong, Banjo-Tooie is a far superior game than this. This is just like one and the only thing that I do better than Banjo-Tooie. At least I think so. By the way, this here trophy that I've been hovering around and slowly trying to get, in Space World there were these 4 switches that appeared to do nothing. No, they activated all this stuff in here in order to get to that trophy. The spring pad had to be activated, this hover pad had to be activated, and I'm pretty sure that whirlpool had to be activated too. With that, we are going to go ahead and return to Hot Rock, during which I will talk about more stuff that was dropped from the game. I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of notes sitting here, so Definitely got a lot to talk about, might also be easier to skip over something. For example, I noticed that I skipped over the reason why I was explaining the difficulty of going back and trying to figure out what jiggies you can get in Banjo-Tooie. It's simpler in this game, probably because the game is kinda simple. I mean, that whirlpool tells you, hey, you need to learn how to go down whirlpools, or hover pads tell you, you need to learn how to use hover pads. You reach a cloudy area, well, I have no idea how you would get past a cloudy area, so I guess we'll come back after we get clues, that sort of thing. But now, on to some of the dropped content. Now, earlier in this Let's Play, I had mentioned that despite this game having 6 worlds, I had actually planned on having 8 worlds. And the worlds are in this order. World 1 was Lucky Woods, World 2 was Sealand. World 3 is Mount Uphill, not Mount Snow, Mount Uphill. World 4 is Cloud 9, World 5 was Big Desert. World 6 was Frosty Cave. World 7 was Hot Rock, and World 8 was Space World. This is important information, by the way, so remember it. When I dropped the world count to 6, what basically happened was I dropped Big Desert entirely, and Big Desert's the only level that I dropped completely. Mount Uphill and Frosty Cave wound up being combined into what is now known as Mount Snow. Because of this, there were a lot of trophies and abilities and stuff that had to be shuffled around due to, you know, the lost worlds. For example, Biggest Blast, which is normally learned here, in fact. Originally I planned on you learning it in Frosty Cave. Biggest Blast, of course, is one of the things that actually did make it into this game, but a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about here today never actually made it into the game. In fact, a lot of stuff... well, of course they didn't make it into the game, that's why they're dropped content, but a lot of the dropped content that I'm going to be talking about never actually became playable. That's what I want to say. Never became playable. Because I realized very early on that I wasn't going to have enough memory to make 8 worlds. Honestly, memory shouldn't have been an issue because you can make a game as many memory cards as you want, but I think I only had 3 memory cards that I could dedicate to RPG Maker, so that's why I had to remove levels and worry about memory constraints and had to have Anime Maker data, that is like sprite data, spread across all 3 memory cards. Never made it past the planning stages. That is what I wanted to say. Now then, the reason we are here is because earlier when we were here we came across this bunch of steam and we were like, oh, we can't go through here. I am not letting that dragon come after me. Except I am, because we've learned supervision in Space World, and with supervision we are now able to come in here and have night vision through the steam. Makes sense. Unfortunately, there's nothing here. Well, there's a couple of there's a couple of tokens and a trophy, but there's like no obstacle here. It's kind of lame. Would have been nice had there been like some sort of obstacles in here, like maybe there could have been like flames dancing around or something that you had to try to dodge in order to get over here, but this is this is just lame. By the way, even though we learned supervision in Space World, supervision was not originally planned for Space World. Instead, it was planned for Big Desert. And, you know, was it Big Desert? Yeah, it was Big Desert. And one of the obstacles in Big Desert that you would use supervision for was to travel through a sandstorm. Because apparently night vision also lets you get through sandstorms. That's useful information if you ever get caught in one. As for the ability that Space World was originally going to have, it was going to have invincibility. That would have been your prize for collecting all 300 tokens in the game. Actually, it would have been 400, I think. Yeah, 400, because 50 tokens per world, and there would have been 8 worlds. But that would have been your goal for collecting, or reward for collecting all the tokens. When the game dropped from 8 worlds to 6, invincibility, I was still planning on having it, but I moved it into well, I was going to move it into Jester's castle. But for whatever reason, I eventually just dropped the idea altogether, probably because it would have been taking too much memory. Having to make sure and check, have every enemy in the game check if you're invincible or not, in addition to checking everything else. Yeah, definitely would have taken too much memory. I will say that it would definitely have been an interesting reward. Would have made the final battle too easy. Oh wait, the final battle already is too easy. By the way, I would like to totally point out this sign. We actually saw this sign once before. We're told to go left, right, left, and left. Whirlpools of fire and ice. I know where that is, and I will show you where that is. Back to Big Desert, though. You know how every world in this game you're greeted by Jester? Well, it would have been a little bit different in Big Desert. You see, in Big Desert, upon entering the world, you would have been greeted by the Pharaoh's advisor. Turns out that the Pharaoh had heard of your exploits and wanted you to help him with a couple of things. What those couple of things are, I'm not entirely sure. But I know there were a couple of temples that I had planned on putting into Big Desert. One of the temples, there would have been a maze inside of it, and it would have been a pretty sucky maze because every dead end would result in instant death. Well, every dead end except one. There was one dead end that would have the, is it MP token or HP token? MP token. One dead end would have had the MP token, and that would be the one dead end that wouldn't kill you. What consistency? And no, the MP token was not going to be the main goal of going through that temple. A trophy was. After all, if you're going to help the Pharaoh, you gotta be able to earn a trophy while doing it. Now, as for the other temple that would have been in Big Desert, I'll get to that in a bit. But first, we are finally going to go off in this direction. Over here, which you cannot get to without the Barney armor. That is a dumb name, and if I ever remake this game, I am changing that name and never mentioning this Barney stuff again. But we come over here, and wow, this looks ugly. It's too bad you can't, like, smoothly transition. It would have been interesting had I made it so there was, like, steam in here the moment you enter the room. Well, granted, the steam effect is the same as the gas attack. Now, what was the arrangement that I had to go through here again? I completely forget. I'm going to assume it was left, right, left, left, right. Well, at the very least, you do get a little sound effect whenever you go into the wrong one. By the way, basically what's going on in here is you're going through this room over and over again. It's not like you're actually making progress. Okay, so it was left, right, right. Left, right. Actually, it was left, right, right, left, left. I'm glad I remembered that before I went to the right one. And suddenly, for some random reason, there is a trophy in here. Even though we passed through this room a couple times before, only now is there a trophy here. How does that work? For that matter, who installed buzzers in the whirlpools? Oh well, it's not a bad trophy. Speaking of whirlpools, one of the trophies in Big Desert, you would have been going to a place called the Quicksand Fields, where there is a whole bunch of quicksand pits. The trophy is in one of the pits. You basically had to keep falling into pits until you found the right trophy. Kinda sucks. In fact, the more I think about it, that Dead End Temple and the Quicksand Fields and a couple other things about the level, Big Desert doesn't sound like it would have been much of a big loss. In fact, there's the HP token of the level 2 of Big Desert. To acquire the HP token, it is located right near the start. Sometimes. Basically what's going on, or what would have went on, is an oasis would randomly appear near the start point, and that's where the HP token would be. Which doesn't sound bad on paper, but most people probably wouldn't be lucky enough to find it. I mean, a lot of people are only going to go into the level once or twice. And then, well, that's it. You're not likely to find that HP token if you're only going into the level a couple times. Probably what I should have done instead, had I made Big Desert, is instead of making it a chance that the HP token is in the level, maybe I could have made it so that the token and the oasis appears at random locations in the world. That way it's always in the world, but where in the world is random. So here we are back at the cloudy section of Cloud 9. Like with the steamy area of Hot Rock, you basically need supervision in order to see through the clouds that suddenly appear in your face. Kind of think of it, if you're like traveling inside a cloud, doesn't that mean like you're going to be getting all wet? What is it like inside a cloud? Is it wet inside a cloud, or is it like dusty? I'm not entirely sure. It's entirely possible though that Mr. Knight will be rusting after this. By the way, down here we got another bad angel. As a reminder, if you use Bigger Blast on it and let it attack, it does the siren song, which makes you wander around and use blast on yourself. Even though you normally use blast on yourself. Except this time it actually hurts you. Also, it's worth noting, it seems to me that the bad angel is the only enemy in the game in which you can use gas on it. Oh yeah, and as a reminder, gas causes damage to both of you. It's a joke move. Not really worth it. So now we're going to continue on through this, and you know, this spot sucks too. It's just like the spot, the steamy area in Hot Rock, except this is even worse because this area is almost nothing but clouds. Aside from the ability shop over there, there's just clouds. Gotta say, supervision really doesn't lend itself well to any puzzle elements. I mean, basically this is the equivalent of acquiring key to an invisible cloudy door, and that's it. It might have been better had I scrapped supervision altogether and kept another ability that got scrapped from my plans. The ability was called... not one of those. The ability was called Time Freeze. You would have learned it in Frosty Cave, and Time Freeze, as the name implies, freezes time. With some restrictions. The Time Freeze, basically, you had to step on a time pad in order to cause time to freeze. But it would have been pretty interesting. For example, in order to get the Space World HP token in the plans, you had to make switches, you had to flip switches in order to make a time pad appear, and you use the time pad to get through a room where lasers are shooting across. The lasers would have probably been just like ropes or chains that were just sitting there flashing, trying to give the illusion of lasers shooting across the room, but it would have been pretty effective, I think. I think there was also going to be a room in one of the temples. Did I mention the other temple? Temple of Traps? No, I haven't mentioned that temple yet. I mentioned the temple where dead ends kill you, but I haven't mentioned the Temple of Traps. That was the other temple that would have been in Big Desert. You would have just had to navigate through a temple full of traps, and one of the traps required Time Freeze. Probably would have been like ropes again, flashing across the room. I don't know, maybe Time Freeze wouldn't have offered a lot of variety of things to do. Although it would have made it easy to get around a horde of enemies. As for that cloudy section, yeah, it definitely sucks. Especially since it's nothing but clouds. Maybe I could have moved one of the temples there, like that trap temple. There could have been like a sky temple that we could have wandered into. That would have been interesting. As for the last trophy in Big Desert, the last trophy you would have had to defeat the Pharaoh himself. I think because at some point Mr. Knight was going to be making fun of his name, which is King Toot. You know, like Toot Toot. I mean, Mr. Knight already made fun of Earthrouter's name. Now that we're over here, though, we have one more trophy that we can acquire here on this upper level. If you recall, back in Cloud 9, we found a switch by the quote-unquote rocket convention that made a hover pad appear here. The hover pad takes you to this trophy. And with that, we have now collected all the trophies and all the tokens in the second level of Jester's Castle. And by second level, I mean second half of the game, like the second floor, even though it goes above ground and below ground at the same time. Whatever. We're done here, and next time we are going to 100% the rest of the game, down to the lower levels. As it says here. I'll see you then.